Hello Warhammer 40k and miniature painting and gaming fans. This is a new channel, Heresy Productions. I'm Palmer, and I actually have another channel called Palmer C123, primarily around HeroClix. I've been playing HeroClix for about a year. Just recently, in the last year, got back into miniature gaming. Probably back in 1989, 1990, I played a bit of Warhammer 40k, and college and lots of things just sort of got in the way, and I just sort of fell out of it. And I had a brief stint of Warhammer Fantasy in the early 2000s, but never got as much into it as I would have liked to. I guess about a year ago, I got into HeroClix primarily because it was just something fun to do with my kids, to practice math and things, and had comic book characters, and it was fun. Of course, doesn't have a lot of any modeling or painting unless you're into doing that. You know, there's a small population of people that do their own pieces in it, but it's primarily kind of a plug and play, or you open it up and you play. It's all painted. So I guess a couple months ago I decided to check out Warhammer 40k again, and primarily to play it, but actually as I started looking into it and purchased some things and started painting, I've actually really enjoyed the painting and terrain building aspect of it. And so this channel, you know, I consider myself a beginner, although I've dabbled with stuff in the past. I'd like to improve my painting skills, so this channel's not about as much in the beginning about giving advice to people, but just sort of a documentary of some of the projects that I'm doing, and then maybe as a beginner, because I am looking throughout all the YouTube and various places, I can just, you know, show other beginners stuff that I'm looking into and how I'm applying stuff to the models I'm doing. I will mention some of the YouTube channels that I've been watching where I've taken inspiration from. Because really everything that I'm going to show today I've pretty much saw on a YouTube channel. So I've always wanted to do Eldar. I actually started out with orcs 20 years ago or so. I never had an Eldar army, and I always wanted to do it. So this time I said, that's it, I'm going to get an Eldar army, and I'm going to start playing Warhammer 40k. And so the first thing I did was just get that 4 Guardian pack, just to practice some painting before getting anything. This is the 4 Guardian pack that I got. And it's the ones that actually have the peg behind the gun where you insert into the chest. I'll show you, I pretty much followed verbatim somebody's YouTube channel on how to paint this guy. I'm fairly happy with how it came out. I'll actually put the name of the channel in the description below, because I apologize, I don't remember the gentleman's name, but it was an excellent video. I really liked it. It was a very good video to watch to get an introduction to painting these guys and just some different techniques. What it essentially you know, entailed is doing a primer and then doing basically gray over the whole model. And then doing a bad black wash, and then lightening that gray, you know, adding some white to it, and just doing your outer plates, some highlights, and then doing it again, you know, another level of lightening. I also had a little bit of highlights on the helmet. It might be hard to see on camera here. There's a little bit of highlighting on the helmet as well. The gun, of course, had a dark gray that was used. So I never used a wash in the past, I mean, because it'd been a long time since I painted miniatures. I found it really neat to use the bad black and to use a wash. It really brought out the detail well. Although I did find it very hard to not cover it over while I was trying to do highlights in the later stages, and I think that's just my skill level as a painter, and just patience and a steady hand and things, and getting comfortable with the brush. Because I've noticed in just painting another set of miniatures after this that I was much more comfortable. Like, just, it was like exponential. Just, it took, you know, after doing 4 figures, the 5th one was just that much easier. Not that I don't have a long way to go. So one thing I will say, just as maybe as my own personal review, is that I put some together, and I'm going to show you in a moment, some other Guardians today that actually come with the starter set of all of Eldar, and they don't have this peg that goes into the chest. As much as these were easier to put together than those, because those have like all the like limbs are independent, which allows more mobility and things, I actually found this hard to snap together. Not hard to just put them in, but just, if you'll see, sorry, my daughter was starting to sing there, so I just had to reel her in for a moment. So, as I was saying, I actually have this bit of separation on these four on the shoulder piece with these two, and I don't know if it's because I got a little bit of paint on the peg or what, but you know, after painting them separately, this gun, and pushing it together, I just had a hard time really getting them easily together, and I was worried about rubbing off the paint on the gun trying to push them in, and so I actually won't ever buy these again, for sure. I'll actually, if I want more Guardians, I'll actually get the separate set, or you know, where they sell them as independent pieces, because they actually fit together much better, in my opinion. Okay, so these are the other Guardians that I put together that are going to be my next project. As you can see, there's a bit more variety in the starter set that they give you. You might not see it, but like here, there's an option for a head, you know, instead of the helmet. So there's this piece on the end here that's a bit taller on this one, as far as these fins on the back. I'll just bring it forward here, which I think is cool. It just adds a little bit of variety. And then there's what they call a range targeter that you can put on his shoulder. And for the guy that is that I have with the human head on, I have a range targeter right there. And there's also a helmet, what they call a helmet communicator, which I'm assuming it's the helmet communicator from what I looked at. There wasn't a lot of instructions with this pack. And so I put that on the guy without the helmet, which makes sense, I suppose. The one thing that's kind of nice about this too is every single pose is slightly different in this group, and so you actually have to have the A, B, C, and D arms correct. And from what I read on the internet, a lot of people just mess it up where they actually can't get them to fit because they think that they're all the same and they're not. But it does actually end up being pretty nice that it actually has. You can see that they do have slightly different poses, which is kind of cool. And so, as much as I'd like them to look exactly like these guys, just because they're going to be together, I actually want to practice some different painting techniques. And so I'm attempting to make some very similar looking Eldar with it in a different way. I know that, I don't know how people feel about the army painter method, but I ended up using them on these Banshees. So the army painter method, as I understand it, is basically a paint and primer that you use together, so you can spray it once. And I like that because I think it also leaves a lot of detail. You're not putting prime and then a layer of paint and then another layer of paint. It also, you know, the next step is to actually do a quick shade, so it actually brings out the detail, similar, I think, in some ways to the Badap Black that I did on the Guardians. And then you can put as much additional base coat on to highlight things as you want. In this case, I did a yellow, I did sort of a yellow on the gun and the hilt of the power sword. I did a wet blend, which is the first time I've ever done that on the power sword, to go from like a dark blue to a really, really light blue. I did red for the hair, but then did a dry brush of blazing orange just to make it, to lighten it up and highlight the hair. I've got, because this is going to be a Biltan Eldar army, I've got a green sort of, I'd call it a loincloth. I'm not sure if it's still called a loincloth on a woman, but that's what I did. And just some brown on the pouches here. On this particular model, there's just one sort of gun holster, and then some of the other ones have pouches on them. And so to do this, I essentially primed it white and painted it white. Then I painted the hair red, put in the color, the yellow and the brown color. I actually initially left the sword, or I actually painted the sword like a gunmetal, like a metal, and then later on realized, hey, these are power swords, and it's a whole troop with power swords, so they really should be painted as power swords. So that was a bit of a fiasco. I actually did the whole model, and I did the power swords and scraped all that away and redid the power swords later. But I used medium tone quick shade, and I think on camera, looking through the camera here, it looks lighter than it does really. I actually like the way it looks through the camera looking at it. I'm very happy with the results, although I would actually prefer a lighter quick shade on it, because it's much darker outside of the camera, or maybe when I look at it after it's uploaded you'll see it the right way. I don't know, just looking through it, it doesn't appear as dark. And so I'm actually quite happy with the result of this. I mean, I did base painting, I did some various techniques on it, but I also found that the quick shade really brought out the detail and still allowed me to do some other things to make a model that I'm quite happy with. So because of that, I'll just focus in on my Banshees here just to show the group of them. Some of the, because I did the power swords separately, some of them look slightly different as far as how much light color they have at the top. But overall, I'm actually quite happy because I see myself as a beginner at this, and really what I want is some decent looking models that I can play the game with, and I'm happy with these. So what I'm planning on doing with these guys now is I'm going to use a base paint of what they call uniform gray for Army Painter. I'm going to use the same green that I used on the helmets. This is Citadel green. I think it's the newer version of what they used to call snot green. And then I'm going to use the same lighter green around the helmets. Then what I'm going to, I think it's called Adeptus Gray. I don't remember the name exactly. But I'm basically first going to do the uniform gray. I'm going to take some of the outer plates and put some lighter Adeptus Gray just to highlight him a little bit. But then I'm going to use a soft, quick shade on it. I'm still going to do the guns the dark gray and keep the green helmet and everything else. And I just want to see how that works, just compared to the process I did with the Bada Black and the many layers of highlighting that I did last time. And you know, I expect them to look slightly different. I'm hoping to keep a bit of a similar paint scheme. These will probably end up being a little bit darker, but I'm kind of interested to see how they look. I mean, these are just the first 4 I did, and so even if I never field them, I'm not, and I will, but I'm not that worried about it. Right now, I see this as an opportunity to try different kind of painting methods, and I'd rather spend my time and test myself on the Guardians, although I'm quite happy with the way the Banshees came. These were actually painted also, by the way. I bought those used and stripped them down, and I'm quite happy with that, how that came out, doing that. But I'd rather really practice on these Guardians than, let's say, my Wraith Lord or a Farseer or something like that, where I'd really like to have some of these techniques down and on some of the individual HQ units and key units. Not that I don't want them all to look good. So moving away from models, I also really am enjoying working on scenery. You know, I would eventually like to field a bit of a game board at the house, be able to play at the house with my kids or other folks, and I actually just find it fun to build scenery. One guy I do know the name of that I actually really like his videos, and I did the scenery verbatim from his video. Is Rubbish In, Rubbish Out is the name of the YouTube channel, and this is what he calls his City Fight series. he didn't end up completing it, and so I took a bit of a risk in doing it. And but I did write him a message, and he wrote me back right away with my questions regarding how he finished it in the end and things. And he's a great guy and was really helpful. And so this is all foam board with various layers of stippling of paint, and then a black wash. And yeah, I kind of followed his method even to the measurements, just because it's my first time doing it. But I really enjoyed this, and I was really amazed as to how well it worked. I mean, this is my first time in green terrain, so I just, I'm not saying this is the be-all, end-all, but I'm actually quite happy with this. It looks good. So, basically, like I said, I appreciate you stopping by, and this is going to basically be a channel where I go over the various projects that I'm going to be doing, and it's going to be focused probably on Eldar for at least the next 6 months. Yeah, no, interesting. I love watching everybody else's videos as well, and thanks for watching. Take care.